Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom, I'm David Mencer, Israeli government spokesman for the Office of National Public Diplomacy in the Prime Minister's office this Monday, the 9th of December, day 433 of the October 7th war, the Simchat Torah war. Please put your questions in the chat now and we'll take each one of them. Just a couple of updates from me and then we'll get to your questions. On our fallen soldiers, the tragic amongst Israel's armed forces, it is with regret that I share with you that since the last briefing, 813 soldiers have fallen. Captain Avram ben Pinchas was 24 years old and from Harasha. He fell in battle in southern Gaza, and these men fell in battle in southern Lebanon. Master Sergeant in the reserves, Binyamin Destau Negoz, was 28 years old and from Bet Shemesh. Sergeant First Class in the reserves, Erez Ben Ephraim, was 25 years old and from Ramat Gan. Major in the reserves, Evgeny Zinashein, was 43 and from Zichron Yaakov, and Captain in the reserves, Sagi Yaakov Rubenstein, was 31 and from Lavi. There are no words of mine that can assuage the pain of their parents and their families. The Prime Minister this morning sent his condolences on behalf of the nation from the bottom of our hearts. The pain of the families is the pain of all of us. We embrace them, their dear families who have lost their precious heroes, sons and daughters in this war for our very existence. The price of war is heavy and painful. Each casualty is a world unto itself. May their memories be a blessing forever. Next on Syria, the collapse of the Assad regime is truly an historic moment for the Middle East. As the Prime Minister has said, the end of tyranny in Damascus offers a great opportunity, but is also fraught with significant dangers for Israel. Israel's forceful action against Hezbollah and against Iran, Assad's main supporters, were in turn used by Assad's enemies. It set a chain of events, a chain reaction for those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its oppression. But it also means that Israel has had to take action against these possible threats. One of them clearly is the collapse of the Separation Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement had held for 50 years. The Syrian army having abandoned its positions, Israel's government gave our forces the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile jihadi forces or Hezbollah embedded themselves right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. As always, Israel first and foremost puts forward a hand of peace to those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and also to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We are following events very, very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, then that is clearly our desire. We want nothing more. But if we do not, we will do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of our country. Practically, what does this mean? It means that the IDF has reinforced its forces on the Golan Heights and deployed forces in the buffer zone and at additional points. Our objective is to prevent hostile jihadi armed forces and Hezbollah from entering the area. Israel, as ever, will do whatever it takes to ensure the safety of the communities on the Golan Heights and all of our civilians. Next on our efforts to get our hostages released in Gaza, I can tell you that Israel will do everything in its power to bring back all 100 hostages, both the living and those who've already been killed. Of the 113 are women, 2 are children, 83 are men, including the elderly. 430 days now. There are negotiations. The US leads them with others. Let me just add that the psychological terror videos released are evidence of the inhumanity, the murderous cruelty of Hamas. Our people are captive in horrific conditions, in violation of international law. Citizens of our country, but citizens of many countries, other countries as well. Next to the ceasefire in the north, Israel will continue to enforce the agreement and will respond with force to any violation. Yesterday, for instance, the Air Force struck Hezbollah terrorists in a weapons storage facility in southern Lebanon. This was in clear violation of the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Lebanon. We, of course, have said from the beginning of this ceasefire arrangement, we maintain our right to act against any threat to our security which breaches the ceasefire agreement. The difference between this time and other times is enforcement. Israel will enforce this agreement. Next, the Iranian proxy from Yemen this morning fired a UAV that originated in Yemen and impacted in the area of Yavne near the southern Mediterranean town of Ashdod. For over a year now, we've been standing against these terror attacks by Iran and their proxies. Iran has been weakened and they are exposed. But one thing which is constant is that Israel will not accept these repeated threats to our existence. And finally, on COGAT and Israel's humanitarian efforts to get supplies into Gaza, let me share with you our latest figures from the last 24 hours. 103 humanitarian aid trucks entered Gaza, 66 trucks were collected from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom by international organizations, but still 685 trucks worth of aid are still awaiting collection from the Gazan side of Kerem Shalom. International agencies need to get their act together, pick it up and deliver it. If you bring lorries, Israel will facilitate their entry and you can distribute the aid. A convoy of 63 trucks entered Gaza directly through Gate 96. 7 tankers of fuel and 6 tankers of cooking gas went in for essential infrastructure. 3 tankers of fuel were coordinated to northern Gaza for water pumping and bakeries. Now, terrorist organizations continue to obstruct the entrance of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Yesterday, I can share with you that terrorists shelled, actually mortared the humanitarian corridor itself next to Kerem Shalom, the Kerem Shalom aid crossing. So to be clear, this is terrorists themselves trying to disrupt aid delivery to their own people. Once again, evidence that Hamas hates Gazans and they're willing to promote a famine to try and starve their people. Israel has stopped that effort and our army eliminated the threat and the aid resumed. The IDF and COGAT acts in accordance with international law. Hamas want to starve their own people, but Israel gets the food in. So that's the end of our briefing today. Questions, please, in the chat, and we'll take each one of them. Okay, first question here I can see is from Nicolas Ruger from Libération. What is the state's reasons for asking for another delay in responding to the Supreme Court's petition on allowing access to the foreign press in Gaza? Thank you for that, Nicolas. I haven't got any further information on that particular issue. I can tell you, Nicolas, that there is no shortage of news coming out of Gaza. It has filled our screens. It has headlined the news consistently for the last 14 months. There has been no shortage of news. I can also remind you that Hamas were the ones who took journalists as hostage in the early, just between 10 and 15 years ago. BBC journalists themselves were taken hostage by Hamas. This is a war zone, and we will do everything in our power to get our hostages back, and we will do nothing that jeopardizes the future of our hostages. I would be more impressed if you were asking about getting our hostages access to the Red Cross, or encouraging the Red Cross to have access to our 100 hostages that remain in Hamas's grasp. There is no shortage of news coming out of the region. And you've asked a further question. Can you expand on why Israel has repeatedly committed to repeatedly committed to freedom of the press, but finds it impossible to allow journalists into zones that are not active combat in the Gaza Strip. Thank you. Okay, I believe I've answered that question, Nicolas. Again, there's no shortage of news coming out of Gaza. It really literally fills our screens from morning till night, and the story is getting out. What is not getting out is our hostages. And once again, we'd be more impressed if the international media actually made representations to get our people out rather than their people in. Next question here is from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. First, is Israel concerned that the Syrian rebels led by al-Jolani may represent a threat? Thank you for that question, Joel. Earlier in my statement, I gave a comprehensive reaction to the situation in Syria. All of us here in Israel are aware of the organizations, these rebels, which have taken control in Syria. Our first reaction is, of course, the hand of peace to all the different sects in Syria. We want good neighborly relations, but our eyes are extremely wide open to the history of these organizations and the things which they stand for. Israel will always put its first hand out to peace, but we are under no illusion of who has taken control in Syria. But we hope it's for a better future for their people as well as for ours. Next question. Is Israel concerned about Turkey's ambitions in Syria? Thank you for that question, Joel. I haven't got anything to add on that. On number 3, is Israel able to help minority communities in Syria, such as the Christians, Druze, and Kurds, who may be concerned for their safety? Well, let me share with you something on that, on particularly the minority issue, because our Foreign Minister Gideon Saar just this morning, our Minister for Foreign Affairs just this morning, emphasized the importance of protecting minorities in Syria. So, for instance, the attacks on the Kurds, which we saw just yesterday in Manbij. The Foreign Minister, our Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, said that these attacks must stop immediately, and Israel is most definitely discussing this with our friends in the US administration as well as other countries. So look, it is Israel's belief that the international community has a moral obligation towards those who fought bravely against ISIS in particular, and other Islamic fundamentalist jihadi groups. And these forces can also be a stabilizing force in Syria. So it'll be the test of the new leaders of Syria, how they treat their minorities. The world is watching, as is Israel, of course. Number 4, will Israel call on the ICC to charge Assad with war crimes, which it has never done? Thank you for that question, Joel. Israel's not a member of the ICC, and I haven't got anything more to add on that particular question. Is there truth to stories that Israel is nearing a hostage deal with Hamas? Thank you for that question, Joel, on the hostage deal. Look, it has been the way we've done things here since this war began, 420 days, not to negotiate from this podium or in public. Our objective has been from the beginning to get our hostages back. We will still, and the Prime Minister's made this clear very recently, that we want to get all of them home. We will do everything in our power to get them home, and we're taking forward the latest opportunities to get them home. I don't want to say more than that. It doesn't help the situation. Ultimately, Israel has been extremely clear. They need to be brought home now, 420 days. It is a breach of international law. It's against humanitarian law. They haven't for once, not one moment, had any access to the Red Cross. and they need to be brought home right now, and Israel will do everything in its power to bring them home. Okay, could you scroll down? Next question from Hannah Julian. What will Israel do if Syria continues to present a threat in southern Lebanon when the ceasefire hits the 60-day mark? Well, let me share with you our thoughts on that, because I'll say to you very, very clearly, Hannah, that fire will be met by fire and peace will be met by peace. As you know, this ceasefire agreement in Lebanon has come into effect now. From Israel's perspective, it's about enforcement. We've made very clear our desire for the cessation of hostilities. Hezbollah have breached this ceasefire on a number of occasions, and we have taken action to prevent further breaches by attacking Hezbollah fighters, as I outlined in my briefing. So at the same time, we are operating determinedly to any violation of the ceasefire agreement. So while enforcing the agreement, we are fully aware what Hezbollah is. We have weakened them. The results of what's happened in Syria is evidence of that fact. Hezbollah is weakened, Iran is exposed and weakened, but we will take forward our plan to achieve defense of all of our people here and ultimately peace for all of our people in this region. Next question from Jane Merrick from the I newspaper. Israel has attacked, you're saying that Israel has attacked Syria's chemical weapons facility. What's the current assessment of what is left of the weapons cache after the strikes? Does it still pose a threat? Thank you for that question, Jane, from the I newspaper. Let me answer it in this way. Israel will do whatever it can to defend itself. That's been true in the past, and it'll be true in the future. We will do everything in our power to defend ourselves. Next question is from Joel Pollack at Breitbart News. New question: would Israel consider a long-term presence atop of Mount Hermon? Why would it ever give up such a strategic spot again? And can we look forward to ski lifts or cable car rides to the top? Thank you for that question, Joel. I haven't got any information for you about the skiing situation right now on the Hermon. Needless to say, the ski resort is closed at the moment, despite there being a good covering of snow up there. Israel's made clear what the situation is when it comes to the buffer zone. We have entered the buffer zone because the Syrian army has abandoned the positions, and so that means that with the collapse of this Assad regime, it means that there is not only opportunity for a better future, but also significant dangers for Israel. So we are taking forceful action against anyone that would seek to harm our people. We know as well that it means that we have taken action against these possible threats. One of them, as you've mentioned that just there, is the Separation Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement, as I've mentioned, has been held for 50 years, but with the Syrian army having abandoned its position, our government has given our forces the order, and this includes the area you mentioned on the Hermon, to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile jihadi forces or Hezbollah embed themselves right next to the border of Israel. Now, we've made clear in answer to your question that this is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement can be found. Look, first things first, the Prime Minister made clear yesterday that our first hand has been put out to peace, to all of those in Syria now, to all of the factions there, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very, very carefully. But if we can establish neighbourly relations and peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, then that is, of course, our desire. But if we do not find our peaceful overtures reciprocated, then we will, as ever, do whatever it takes to defend our country and the border. So practically, what does this mean? It means that the IDF is reinforced. We've reinforced our forces on the Golan Heights, and we've also deployed forces in the buffer zone, and also in another few additional points. Our objective, in answer to your question, is to prevent hostile jihadi armed forces and Hezbollah from entering the area. We'll do whatever it takes to ensure the safety of our communities on the Golan, as well as the rest of Israel. Okay, another question here from Fred Ager, and your question is, thousands of Syrian refugees are eagerly waiting at the border crossings of southern Turkey, eager to return home at the fall of Assad's government. Many arrived in Silveguzu and on Supinar, excuse me if I butchered those names, border gates, dressed in blankets and coats. Hundreds of displaced Syrians were also returning to Syria from Lebanon, with dozens of cars lining up to enter. Any concerns for Israel regarding civilian migrant refugee movements? Any particular measures? Thank you for that question, Fred. I haven't got anything particularly to share with you. I have shared with you already that we've bolstered our forces on the Golan and in the areas which have been vacated by the Syrian army. We have bolstered our forces. We've said that these are temporary measures, but ultimately we'll do whatever we can to facilitate that the border remains peaceful and that jihadis and our enemies do not occupy the space which was previously either manned by the Syrian army or by the UNDOF force, which was supposed to maintain the buffer zone. Okay, that's the last question today. Thank you for joining us. In the meantime, please do stay safe, and we'll see you at the next briefing. Thank you. Bye-bye.